Caleb Evans was a gas station attendant in a small town in Ohio. A quiet, humble man with dreams that extended beyond his station, he was known by locals for his generosity and kindness. He lived in a modest apartment on the edge of town, close enough to walk to work. Caleb's job was unremarkable, his days predictable, yet he took pride in being helpful to every customer who came by. However, one winter afternoon, something happened that would change the course of his life. It was a bitterly cold day. Snowflakes drifted from the sky, and the roads were slick with ice. Caleb had just refilled the coffee pot when he saw an elderly woman pull up to the pump. She looked frail, bundled in layers, fumbling in her purse. As Caleb approached, he noticed her hands trembling, her face marked with worry. She barely had enough to fill her tank, and she apologized repeatedly for taking so long. Without a second thought, Caleb reached into his pocket and paid for her gas. The woman's eyes filled with gratitude as she thanked him, clasping his hands in hers, whispering blessings in a voice too soft to hear clearly. As he watched her drive away, Caleb felt warmth fill him. He had made her day just a little bit easier. But kindness, as Caleb would soon find, sometimes comes with a cost. Caleb's manager, Ben Wright, was a gruff man known for his strictness. That evening, as the sky darkened and the temperature plummeted, Ben stormed into the gas station, his face flushed with anger. Apparently, he had reviewed the day's transactions and noticed the payment Caleb made on behalf of the elderly woman. "Do you think we run a charity here, Caleb?" Ben's voice echoed through the small station. "Paying for a stranger's gas out of the station's register? We can't afford that, especially not with margins as thin as they are." Caleb tried to explain that he'd used his own money, but Ben wasn't having it. He believed that any kind of leniency or generosity would open the door for others to start bending the rules. By the end of the heated exchange, Caleb found himself holding a termination letter and watching Ben disappear into the snow. Jobless and bewildered, Caleb trudged home that evening, head hung low, a storm of thoughts brewing in his mind. He'd given his best to the station for years, and now, because of one simple gesture, he was left out in the cold. But as he approached his apartment door, he noticed something unusual, a figure standing in the shadows. Caleb's heart raced as he neared his apartment. The figure stepped forward, and he recognized her. It was the same elderly woman he'd helped that afternoon. Wrapped tightly in a woolen coat, she looked at him with a strange intensity. "Thank you for your kindness, Caleb," she began in a shaky but determined voice. "I've come to return the favor." She extended a small, folded piece of paper towards him. Confused, Caleb accepted it, glancing at the note before looking back up, only to realize she had already turned and was walking away, her figure disappearing into the darkness. Unfolding the paper, Caleb found an address and a simple instruction: "Come tomorrow at noon." He stood there, puzzled and uncertain about what he should do. Curiosity won, and he resolved to see what the next day would bring. The following day, Caleb arrived at the address. The building, an old Victorian house on the outskirts of town, looked grand but slightly run down. He approached the door, and just as he was about to knock, it opened to reveal a young woman dressed in black, her expression reserved but welcoming. "My grandmother spoke highly of you," she said, gesturing for him to come inside. "Please, follow me." Inside, the house was filled with antique furniture, walls lined with portraits of generations past. The young woman led him into a room where the elderly woman sat in an armchair by the fire. "My name is Alice," she said, her voice surprisingly strong. "And I have something for you." To Caleb's shock, Alice offered him a job, one that paid more than he had ever earned at the gas station. His task, she explained, was simple: accompany her on errands, help her with household tasks, and offer her companionship. She was, she admitted, lonely and estranged from most of her family. Caleb hesitated. The offer seemed almost too good to be true, and he barely knew this woman. But he had no other options, and something about Alice's eyes drew him in. He agreed, and with that, his life took another unexpected turn. Over the next few weeks, Caleb settled into his new role. Alice was kind but guarded, and Caleb noticed strange things about her and her house. She seemed to know things about him that he had never shared, and she often referenced people or events he could not understand. The young woman he had met, whom Alice referred to as her assistant, would come and go at odd hours, always casting suspicious glances at Caleb. One night, while cleaning an upstairs room, Caleb stumbled upon an old journal. Its leather cover was worn, and the pages were filled with Alice's handwriting. The entries were cryptic, hinting at a complicated family history and wealth hidden away, along with mentions of something referred to as the decision that Caleb's act of kindness had apparently triggered. Confused and intrigued, he slipped the journal back where he found it, deciding to uncover the truth piece by piece. As Caleb's questions grew bolder, Alice became more cryptic, almost as if she was testing his curiosity. One evening, after they'd spent hours talking by the fire, Alice finally opened up about her family's dark history. She revealed that she had once been part of a powerful family empire that had controlled industries across the state, from textiles to shipping. But it hadn't been without sacrifices. A brutal family feud erupted years ago, dividing siblings and cousins over the inheritance and control of the empire. Alice hinted at how betrayal from within her own family had left her isolated, her fortune hidden, and her trust shattered. She described a night when her family's legacy slipped away, piece by piece, as she was forced to watch from the sidelines, unable to do anything. Since then, she had kept her wealth carefully hidden, locked behind legal barriers, waiting for someone who possessed the loyalty and compassion her own family had lacked. Caleb felt a strange sense of empathy, as if he'd found a kindred spirit. Yet, he couldn't shake the feeling that Alice was only giving him pieces of the puzzle, leading him deeper into her world for reasons that went beyond trust alone. The tension in the house grew after Caleb's discoveries. The assistant, Diana, became colder toward him, and Caleb suspected she knew he was getting closer to the truth. One night, as he walked through the dimly lit hallway, he overheard her on the phone, whispering details about his every move. She was updating someone about his activities, and from the tone of her voice, he could tell it wasn't out of concern for Alice. Caleb confronted Alice the next day, his voice firm, demanding to know what was really going on and why Diana seemed intent on sabotaging him. Alice looked at him with a weary gaze, her once sharp eyes softened by age and sadness. She told him that Diana was a distant relative who believed she had a claim to the inheritance and had been working to undermine him. "This is part of the test, Caleb," Alice confessed. "Family is not just blood, it's loyalty, integrity, and courage. I've spent my life surrounded by people who only cared about their gain, and I refuse to pass my legacy on to someone like that again." Caleb understood the weight of her words. He had to decide if he would continue, knowing he would need to protect himself from both Diana and the darker forces within the family, or walk away from it all. Determined to find answers, Caleb began exploring every corner of the mansion. Late one night, he finally found a hidden latch behind an old bookcase in the basement. It opened to reveal a narrow passage that led to a small, dusty room. Inside, Caleb discovered several chests filled with old documents, including deeds, business contracts, and faded photographs of Alice and her family from decades ago. What caught his eye was a letter with his name on it, dated long before he'd ever met Alice. He opened it, his heart pounding. The letter, written by Alice herself, revealed that she had been following his life from afar. She had learned about him through an old friend who had crossed paths with Caleb's mother years ago. Caleb's mother, as it turned out, was part of the estranged branch of Alice's family, and he was the last surviving member of that line. The letter explained that Alice had been waiting for the right moment to bring him into her world, to see if he could restore the family's honor. She saw him as the answer to her family's redemption, and his kindness to her at the gas station had been the final sign she needed to invite him in. Stunned, Caleb realized his act of kindness was more than just a gesture, it was the turning point of a plan set into motion long ago. Armed with the truth, Caleb confronted Diana, demanding she explain her role in Alice's life and why she had been watching him so closely. Diana initially denied any wrongdoing, but after Caleb pressed her, she revealed her motives. She confessed that her loyalty lay with a faction of Alice's distant relatives who wanted the inheritance for themselves. They viewed Caleb as an outsider, someone unworthy of the family's wealth and legacy. Diana admitted that her orders were to manipulate Caleb, to make him appear untrustworthy in Alice's eyes. Her goal had been to provoke him into giving up, leaving Alice no choice but to leave her fortune to those who shared her blood. But with the revelations he had uncovered, Caleb held the upper hand. Diana realized that her family's plan had failed, and she agreed to Caleb's offer. If she left peacefully, he would ensure she received a small share of the inheritance. Reluctantly, she accepted, leaving Caleb to finally focus on his purpose in the house without further interference. With the inheritance secured and his enemies dealt with, Caleb felt he was at the end of his journey. Yet Alice, now weakened and confined mostly to her bed, called for him one last time. Her voice was frail, her gaze distant but intent. "Caleb," she whispered, "you've come so far, but there's one last thing you must know." She revealed, through labored breaths, that everything he had endured was part of a final test. She had designed these challenges to confirm he was worthy, someone who could withstand deceit and betrayal without losing his kindness or his integrity. With her final words, she told him of the real inheritance. It wasn't just money or property. The legacy she was passing down included the responsibility to use that wealth wisely, to restore not only the family's honor but to help others, just as he had helped her. Caleb realized the true purpose of her fortune wasn't merely about reclaiming lost riches, it was about creating a legacy of kindness and generosity that would live on for generations. As Alice closed her eyes for the last time, Caleb stood by her, feeling both the weight and the gift of her legacy settle upon him. From that day forward, he resolved to live up to her trust, building a future that honored her memory and the family he had once thought he'd never known.